wanted to ask you a little bit about search engine optimization and SEO. Maybe Greg, you could talk a little bit about that. What should people be thinking about? Are there things they should be thinking about?
Well, SEO is an evolving field, it's an evolving practice. There's new ideas, new ways to optimize your search engine compatibility every day. We discovered one thing we recently did was adding whatever your main dissemination point is. For us, it's our blog. For a lot of ET centers, I'm sure it's a website, where you add that URL on the top of your YouTube or Flickr description. That adds, it combines the upstream, downstream content, everything matches. So your Google rank goes up, your Yahoo rank goes up. That's one cool practice we discovered, and we're looking at it every day. It's something is what, like I said, it's an evolving practice.
Keywords are another factor.
Yeah.
We'll actually, on our schedule, we're going to do a quick blog on some keyword tools and using keywords. As Greg alluded to, upstream, downstream content. The content that you have on your YouTube, say, video description, somewhat matches the content from the source, be it the blog or whatever. I mean, there's a lot of there's subtle tricks. We're conscious of the fact that our audience has, a high workload. We all went through this to some degree with our own workloads, in our own businesses. But once you get through that initial bump, as Dave said, this is a very practical, a very user-friendly dissemination tool. And as Greg alluded to via your question, these are tools that have Google juice. These are tools that can take the center much farther than they thought possible from the perspective of search engine optimization, to reaching new audiences, reaching funding sources. We're really optimistic that engaging in this will provide significant benefits to the centers.
That's interesting, because we're all under the gun to disseminate. All the NSF centers. That's part of one of our major goals and objectives. But we're all struggling with trying to collect stats on this stuff.
Sure.
How do you measure it? If somebody's, if we can track things like downloads, but how do we know who these people are? How do we know what they're doing with the content? How do we know how they're using it? Well, these are the things we've been asked to think about.
Sure. From constant contact, obviously, email newsletters. You can track consumptions and but all of the platforms we're talking about at least have some form of, you can track consumption. In fact, Facebook itself, we're doing more and more with Facebook analytics, and that's pretty robust. You can get a lot of good data there. But YouTube, certainly you can track views. Right. The content is somewhat portable too, because it's a hyperlink, so people can take it with them and redistribute, and you can track some of that as well. So
yeah, I would say that the analytics part, especially in YouTube and Facebook Insight and YouTube Insights, both have really been upgraded, I think, in the last year and a half. And you can really do a lot of, by date, where people are going, where they came from when they got to your page, and that's something that's very interesting. Also, Google Analytics is a pretty user-friendly tool that you can add to a website. And again, that finds where people are coming from, where they're going, how many hits, how many views, by day, by time, whenever. And those are a few tools that I think could be of use to AT centers.
And private sector clients that we're reacting to are really responding well to this type of information. We can give them a lot of data on who's consuming their information. We think AT centers are going to be,
I think the really good news here, from what I've been seeing from the data that we collected, is there's a lot of great content that the AT centers already have. So they're already doing the work to begin with. So we're not asking them to all of a sudden go out and start collecting or posting new information. It's taking what they're already doing and perhaps thinking differently about how they're going to disseminate it and distribute it in a way that is going to be most effective for them, both from an engagement standpoint and a measurability standpoint. So if you go back and if the centers go back and look at what they're already putting on their websites and what they're already putting in their newsletters, and be able to step back and look at some of the best practices that we're going to recommend through the study and say, yeah, let's think differently about this. It's the same content. It's still the same time that we needed to go and invest to gather it. But from a dissemination standpoint, let's rethink about how we're distributing it. And from that regard, you're not duplicating efforts, you're not adding extra work necessarily, because 90% of the work's already been done from what I've been seeing. It's there. It's just a matter of really taking advantage and understanding more of how these platforms works and what the benefits are, which doesn't take long to kind of figure that out when you start to dig around in them a little bit and say, oh yeah, I get it. We're going to do it this way because these are all the benefits, and we're going to actually reap even more benefits and achieve the goals that we wanted to set, that we've wanted all along, and this is going to help with that.
I heard an interesting analogy relative to use of, say, Twitter and in the political realm, and the perspective was that once someone follows you on Twitter, you basically own that vote. So when you look at it, if you take how people opt into social media, you do have the benefit of knowing who they are because they, let's say, like you or friend you or fan you or follow you. You know, you create an audience, and as Dave and Greg alluded to earlier, you can not only do you know who those people are, but you can create community around your content. So you can expand on it. They have followers, they have friends. I mean, I just would like to add, you know, I think if we came back and did this study again, another review this time next year, things would change dramatically because just there's such a huge shift towards these platforms from the perspective of, you know, not necessarily talking about where people had to lunch or what they did embarrassingly last night, but, you know, from the perspective of real business tools, real, you know, organizational benefits. So I think, you know, it's growing, it's going to happen fast, and we certainly saw in both of our studies a lot of enthusiasm for it amongst the ATE centers.